Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest is David Gabor, partner of the Wagner Law Group and founder of DGN Workplace Initiatives. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jonathan. Pleasure to be here. Happy New Year to you and yours.
To you as well. I hope it's off to a good start. Always interesting to me to talk to attorneys who want to be preventative in nature. Today's topic I know you want to talk about is the steps that companies can take, that managers can take to avoid litigation. I think you've got some great advice. So why don't you, for context, tell people the areas that you practice in and what you do, and then we can jump into some of the topic.
My pleasure. So I am a partner with the Wagner Law Group, and my focus is employment law, pretty much anything arising out of the employer-employee relationship on the management side. But I also formed DGN Workplace Initiatives to help companies keep out of trouble. And what we do is we provide training, help create policies so companies are compliant and have best practices.
Excellent. So that preventative nature, an ounce of prevention, as they say, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about some of the things that you come across and some of the most common pitfalls, if you will, perhaps that companies and managers face that can be avoided with taking a little of that preventative medicine, so to speak.
Sure. When lawsuits come in, we try to figure out what could have been done to avoid the lawsuit. And I do a lot of research and look at reports from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And a couple of common threads. An employee working for a national retailer, a giant, goes to her boss and says, I need to have a sugary substance. I'm a type 1 diabetic. Boss says, no, you can't do that. That's not our look. That's not our field. You can't do it. She gets a low blood sugar. She drinks an orange juice. It costs $1.89. $1.89. Boss found out about it. And by the way, she paid for it and had the receipt. Boss comes in and she gets fired. Manager, her boss, didn't know how to respond when she asked for that simple accommodation. And an employee working for a pharmacy in Louisiana goes to her boss and says, and she's pregnant, I'm spotting, I need to see my doctor. No, you can't leave. I'm spotting, I need to see my doctor. If you leave, I'm going to treat you like you quit. She goes to the doctor, she gets fired. And in both those instances, the boss should have gone to human resources and said, what do I do? One is a request by a type 1 diabetic just to be able to drink an orange juice if she's sick, low blood sugar. The other is a pregnant woman asking to go to see her doctor when she's got a medical emergency. If the managers had been trained properly, those two lawsuits would not have been brought. The one with the type 1 diabetic, that cost $780,000.
Wow. So it's your contention that managers can be trained to, it sounds very, very obvious, but in these large organizations, you've got an HR department that probably is much more adept and trained at dealing with these issues, but can recognize that you need to probably have that dialogue. And, in that particular case, it sounds like it's not a major accommodation, allowing somebody to have a beverage to prevent a medical emergency.
Yeah. So, picture yourself, it's a busy time of day. You're in your car, you're the front car at a red light, and there's a car on your left, there's a car on your right, and the light turns green. You don't floor it. You look left, you look right. There might be a pedestrian crossing, someone running a red light, a car turning in front of you. We do that. But once you become an experienced driver, you don't even think about it. You do it as a reflex. And that's what we want the managers to be ready. So before this issue happens, if an employee asks you a question, if an employee requests leave, an accommodation, reports some form of harassment or discrimination, be ready in advance. It's a simple training. And let the manager understand, what should the manager do? When should the manager go to HR and say, hey, Fred came over to me. Fred said he needs an accommodation. How should we handle it? It's a simple training. And no more than 45 minutes to an hour for the managers to be trained. It can be done virtually. It doesn't even have to be in person. And then you can also, at the same time, reinforce some of your core values, your mission, your vision for the company. Um, if that had happened, these two lawsuits would not have been brought. In fact, by the way, over the last year, according to the EEOC, failure to accommodate, whether it's a disability or Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, was the biggest issue the EEOC was dealing with.
So, in a macro sense, why is it? Is it that people, and maybe my generation, your generation looks at it and says, logic's gone out the window. People don't think before they act, or is it just a complete lack of training? I mean, in your case, you're talking about training, but it seems to me that some of these things are, as we like to say, common sense. Right? Somebody comes to you with a question and they need an accommodation. It's like, okay, or is it what's driving sort of that trend?
I think part of it is common sense. It's a head scratcher. If a person's pregnant and is spotting, go see your doctor. Let me know how you're doing. That's the proper response. But unfortunately, sometimes I think managers feel pressure. They have to finish a project on time. They've got budgetary issues. Maybe that's the case for some people. Other people are afraid to go to HR because it might be seen as a sign of weakness, as instead of a sign of intelligence. Hard to figure out why they react the way they do. But with the training, maybe they would understand it's okay to go to HR if you have questions. That's not a sign of weakness. It's what we want you to do, And there's another thing too. If you have 5 managers and, in the company dealing with employees at a similar level, and they don't let HR know about a request for an accommodation, you may get 5 different outcomes when the same type of request is made, and that could also lead to problems. So sometimes it's so important to centralize the process. It does make a big difference.
Well, it's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, the E in EEOC is equal,
Yeah.
and the need to treat people the same. And I find that that's one of the challenges, and certainly the first thing in our consulting practice that I talk to people is, are you treating them the same, or are you just treating everybody else? You can't go and make special cases for every person, or by default, you're not treating people equally.
Yeah. And that becomes a real big problem because one person is going to say, hey, I have the same thing. I wasn't treated the right way. So maybe I have an ADA issue, but I might also have a race or a gender or an age issue as well.
So, where do you start? And I know that your emphasis is on training managers and training business owners and leaders. Do you start with from a process perspective? You start with an audit. You said you do a lot of research. You ask a lot of questions. To understand where they've been. How does the process to engage happen?
For management training, it's actually pretty simple. I talk with leadership. I look at what training has taken place over the last couple of years. How many managers do you have? Where are they located? And then we come up with a plan for training. I create the plan. I run it by leadership to get their approval because, hey, if I'm going to go talk to their team, that's a big bit of trust on their part, trusting me to get it right. So I'm going to make sure that they're 100% comfortable with the material. Then we also want top-down support. We want the managers to know the upper muckety mucks are buying into this program. They want to see it happen. And I also like to have someone from HR sit in as well when we do the training, because that's the bridge we're looking to build between HR and the management team. Then we do the training. Depending upon the client, it's done on Zoom, Teams, or in person. And like I said, it's 45 minutes to an hour, and it's not one-on-one. I could, train a group of people at the same time. So it's not even expensive. It's, we also like to, when possible, build in other things such as management over the course of a year, better ways to communicate with the team so the managers and the team are working more efficiently, focus a bit on employee engagement. And as I said before, reinforce the mission, the vision, the core values of this company.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, it sounds like what a lot of what you're doing is really opening up the channels of communication, opening up dialogue, so that people are more aware. One of the rubs that I use often is empathy. There's a need to have empathy within organizations, and a lot of that seems to be gone today. On one extreme, I think younger generation wants empathy, and I think a lot of people are devoid of empathy. So, having those pieces come together, I think solves a lot of problems. If you can have the dialogue, if you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, if you can understand where somebody else is coming from, and realize that yes, they may be all for the company, but under the circumstances, they have a particular need that they have to take care of first.
Yeah, and by the way, if I litigate a case, and I've done a lot of litigation over my career, there are winners and losers. Even when cases get settled, a client's looking at, the impact this litigation has had on the business. If they've had legal fees, there's been disruption to the business, they've lost good employees. So they're never really happy, even if we get a case, thrown out on a motion for summary judgment. The employees aren't happy because they feel they've been wronged, harmed. They've probably lost a job, lost a lot of compensation and benefits. So you don't have a situation where everybody wins. A good training, everybody wins. And I
Excellent.
love that part of it. I love the feedback I get from the companies and the idea that the employers and the talent thrive when you do these kinds of programs.
Excellent. It sounds like wonderful advice, and something that every company should undertake. David, if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about how you train and what it is that you do, what's the best way for them to reach you?
My phone is the easiest, 617-532-8035.
Excellent. David Gabor, partner at the Wagner Law Group and founder of DGN Workplace Initiatives. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.